Hey, welcome everyone. My name is Monty Gardner. I lead the revenue management team. I'm joined by Sheetal Patel and Pankaj Lad from District 5. And we're going to be talking today about a new reporting tool that is, I think, very exciting. It's something called the RFM, or the Recency Frequency Monetary Dashboard. And we're going to lead off with just a quick description of what that dashboard is. Sheetal, maybe we'll let you lead off. What, in plain English, what does this dashboard do, and why would someone use it?
Recency, frequency, and monetization, right? Recency is how recently someone stayed with you. Frequency is, how often have they stayed with you? And monetary is how much money do they spend with you? And what this model does is it takes each one of these categories and divides them up into fifths. So your top 20 gets a score of 5, the next 4, and so on, all the way down to 1. And it is a way to rate accounts in your system by these 3 categories to find out the value of a customer. So Pankaj, if you want to explain a little bit.
Yeah, and I think what was so powerful of this report is it's your data. It's not, the brand's data, it's your data. It's all the customers that are coming and staying and booking at your hotel. It's being captured and analyzed on this report. And I think that's, that it's so powerful that it's your data and it's not, an aggregate of, the state data or something like that. But what's, by having a bucketed into these different segments, immediately I can look at this and I'll know which customer is spending the top 20% in terms of dollars, who is in that top 20 bucket, who is staying with you very often in terms of recency, and then who is staying, recency in terms of when they stayed with you, and then how often, that's frequency, the top 20 there. So all of a sudden you just define who are your top customers. And the other cool thing about this report, because it's divided into different segments, you can now look at it based on an individual customer. So I think one of the tabs, it kind of filters based on a rewards account. So you can look at an individual traveler and you could look at who are your top 20 in terms of these 3 categories, or you could look at it by company account and start looking at it from that perspective. And I believe that one of the third tabs is emails. You can actually look based on the @domain address of an email and see, hey, what are your top 20 that come in through that category too?
So if I understood, if I can just kind of recap what I just heard, what we've got here is a scoring system, and we're scoring people along the lines of 3 specific metrics: recency, frequency, and money. And we can look at those metrics in 3 different ways: by email domain, by corporate account, and also by loyalty ID, by their individual loyalty credentials. And you're saying that that's providing basically a framework for you to kind of analyze and inspect your own guests' production at your specific hotel. Is that correct?
So Monty, absolutely. But here's a very simple example. In November time, my wife would go through our entire PMS and looking for database and looking for all their top customers. Why? She wanted to mail out holiday greeting cards. And so what she would do is she'd try to look for who are your top customers.
Yeah.
Well, this report can quickly tell you, not just by individuals, but also by companies, who are your top customers. But then more importantly, one of the activities that we would do at the end of the year, but now you could do it more often, you want to look at who slipped, who used to be up here and now dropped 1 notch. And now you've got a conversation with that customer or that individual, that company, to ask why. Why did it slip?
So wait, so before we get to the why, Pankaj, which one of these numbers will slip when you have a customer that used to stay with you a lot that's not staying with you a lot anymore?
That's a great question. So what's cool is, if we want to answer that question, which is we know that the monetary number was high, the frequency number was high, but then the recency, how recently did this customer stay with you? That would be maybe one notch lower. So if we were to code that, if their top 20 buckets were all 5, 5, 5, then to answer this question, your recency score would drop from a 5 to a 4, but everything else would be 5s. So I'm looking for customers that are 4, 5, 5s. And boom, I've got a list that I can now dig or have one of my staff members dig.
Excellent. So again, just to recap, this scoring system, 3 metrics, scaled on the order of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest or the best, for lack of a better word, and 1 being the worst. And you're saying that if someone moves from a 5 to a 4, that's an early indicator that something could be amiss. Something's changed.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you know, the reverse is true too, which is you can start looking at the bottom of the list, right? Start looking at your 111s. And you know, if your sales manager or your front desk manager says, hey, you know, we need to go take some cookies to this 111s, well, maybe those cookies are better for up top, maybe your 4, 5, 5s.
Yeah, right. Now you've mentioned your wife with the Christmas cards, which I think of as kind of a marketing application. You mentioned the sales director with the cookies. Who are all the intended users of this report? Who are the people that you think should be consulting it on a semi-frequent or regular basis?
So I'd say, ownership and sales staff, and sometimes both those go together in our business, right? So it's just an intelligent way to look at your data, right? Let's say you have 300 companies staying with you over a course of a year. You don't have the time to solicit 300 people. What this report does, your 555s, you know who your top clients are. You don't need to visit them, just an email or hi, hello works. Now your 455s and your 355s, people that have dropped off in this past year, those are the ones you want to concentrate on. And then as the number gets lower in certain amount of these categories, it could be businesses that have left the area, businesses, that don't need rooms anymore, or were one-time business. So you're not wasting your time, where there is no business. You're actually able to hone that limited time you have as a hotel owner or a sales manager and make it more effective.
Yeah, I'd echo that sentiment that time is so precious commodity these days, especially with everyone experiencing labor crunch. Everyone's grappling with where do you focus your energy? Where do you focus your time? And this report helps you, hone in on, hey, focus here because these accounts or these travelers, they slipped. And you can ask why.
And in your experience, Sheetal and Pankaj, would you say that is where the focus is best placed on those high value customers that are showing either 555 or maybe they've recently slipped down to 455, as opposed to say the 222s or the 123s? Are we better off focusing on those folks that still have the semblance of frequency and recency?
So this goes back to the way we used to do prospecting, right? We'd take our filing cabinet in sales, pull it open, take all the files out and start calling on accounts. Well, you're wasting a lot of time calling on accounts that maybe, didn't stay with you. And this is the other aspect of this report that is kind of a hidden aspect. This is all your two-way data and it's PMS independent. So if you switched PMSs over the last several years, you actually now have access to all that data put together in Best Western's data lake, and you're able to see accounts as a whole. So,
Yeah,
this go on.
This is a great point, Sheetal, because if I understand correctly, this two-way data on this QuickSight report, it actually goes back to the beginning of when two-way started. And which for a lot of our members out there, it's to when your hotel opened and went on to the two-way. So it's, when you look at this analysis, it's very powerful because it's looking at the history of your whole hotel.
I can imagine that what you just said, Pankaj, is especially impactful when there's a break in continuity. like in an auto transfer situation, or the hiring of a new director of sales. Like
Or a pandemic.
or a pandemic. You're missing, there's some sort of break in what happened, and it's a long enough break, or there's enough disruption where you don't really necessarily have that window into long-term history. And yet here it is right in front of you, ready for you to just kind of start browsing.
And I
Yeah.
tell you, the pandemic is what, is a great example of a customer that slipped from a 555 to a 455. And now it allows my staff to have better, smarter conversations with that group to say, hey, we haven't seen you in a while.
Yep.
So as you've analyzed your own respective RFM scores, I imagine that there have been some lights going off sometimes. Data that you always had, but it was in a filing cabinet, or it was in some other kind of antiquated method that you had to retrieve it. So what kind of surprises have you had as you've kind of unearthed this treasure trove of data? Has anything stood out to you that you say, wow, I really wasn't expecting to find that?
So how do you organize your filing cabinet, Monty?
Well, usually alphabetically, or perhaps
Exactly.
by, yeah, go ahead.
That's how we used to do it. The beauty of this tool is I organize it by the RFM score. So I'm organizing it by the account that's the most valuable to my hotel to the least valuable. And that alone has opened our eyes, because we can start at the top of this list and work our way down, and we know we're being as efficient as possible.
So I guess the next question is then, we've talked about why this can be such a valuable thing. What advice would you give to a hotel that's kind of looking at this in QuickSight, and they are time constrained, and they don't have an hour or two to really embed themselves in all of the data. But what are those 2 or 3 things that you would encourage them to do as they at least try to make progress in understanding kind of what these scores are trying to tell us?
So I'd say I've got 2 suggestions when it comes to this. Some are aimed at the brand and some are aimed at the user. And for the user, I'd say, it's QuickSights. Even QuickSights alone can help improve your bottom line. There are many reports on there that are not like traditional reports. I know, Monty, you've got business insights. That's just amazing for the way we do business. This is the same thing. This report is a tool, and it's only a tool, and a good tool if you're willing to use it and open it. And if you aren't the one, train somebody else to look at this and just bring things to your attention. For the brand, I'd say, hey, what are some quick wins? If I only had 10 minutes to look at this report every day, what should I be looking at? If I could only look at one thing on this report, one RFM code, what's that code, and how do I weaponize that data?
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say, my advice, to the general membership is, when you look at this data, I'd suggest look at the overall trends. Try not to get overly focused on the individual, granular bits of information there, because you can drill down to the individual guest that's tied to, some of these groupings. Okay. But I would look at the overall trends, so if certain blocks of groups of these scores are moving on you, watch for those trends, because I think that's very powerful to be looking at. And then I'd say, the other advice for, I'd say, both the brand and for the individual hotel, just it's just as important to not just look at the top, but look at the bottom, and always ask ourselves, should we be focusing down here at the very bottom? Because obviously that is on the very bottom of our list, and that's bringing us, the least amount of impact.
Yeah.
And I'd say, when I talk about that, it's not that I'm saying don't take that dollar. Of course, if that customer comes in, you're going to rent them their room. So I'm not saying don't rent to them. I'm saying, when you're looking at from an aggregate, that person just isn't there very often at your hotel to make them a top customer.
And
Okay.
also, I'd like to add something. This isn't only a sales tool. Okay. let's say you have 2 diamond members staying at your property. One diamond member is a 111, hasn't stayed with you, hasn't given you a lot of money, and it's his first day, so his frequency isn't high. And then you got another diamond member that's a 555. Which is your better customer. And let's say somebody had an unfortunate event at your hotel, there was a problem with cleanliness or something. It's nice to know who you're speaking to. You don't want to jeopardize a 555.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of bringing things to a close. So is it fair to say that so there are 3 tabs in this dashboard? It sounds like both of you spend most of your time on that second tab, the corporate account tab, because you like to evaluate.
And the loyalty account analysis.
And the loyalty account.
Yeah, I'd say
Okay.
those 2 are where I spend most of my time.
So
Got it.
I think the way you look at it is your email domain analysis is to look for a corporate domain email address that maybe sneaks into your 555
Right.
but doesn't have an agreement with you or you don't have a relationship with.
Yeah.
Your second tab is more of a maintenance tab, right? Are you losing any accounts or any accounts slipping? And then that third tab is your loyalty tab. It actually gives you more insight into your Best Western Rewards customer. Rewards being as important as it is for our brand, it's nice to be able to start seeing, okay, these are the guys that frequent my hotel.
Mhm.
And these are,
Yeah.
my number 1 customers.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And at the top of the page, I can't help but notice the first thing that you see is the hotel sales optimization representative listed very prominently. Why is that?
Well,
So when it comes, go on, Pankaj.
No, the HSO team is a very important, vital part of all of this, because if you see an account that's on here, your HSO rep can help you drill further into it. They're kind of like your gateway into the rest of the sales organization at Best Western. And so, that's something that I think the whole HSO team is working really hard to ensure every member knows how to best utilize your HSO person. So this tool just helps you have once again, a more intelligent conversation with your HSO manager.
Well, and then the other part I want to just add to that is a lot of times for us in membership, the question is, who do we call? And in this report, it's right at the top. If you've got a question, if you've got a concern, you've got a point of contact you can start with.
Very good. Well, we'll let that be the last word. Thank you for joining us today, and we wish you luck as you unearth this buried treasure that is the RFM report. We'd encourage you to check out our tutorial, which will explain to you in detail, step by step, how to utilize the dashboard and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you for your time.